Get pucked. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get Pucked, ABC edition today. Here with you with Vito and Dave. I'm Matt. And again, today's episode sponsored by Cafe Victoria's. You can check them out at 8600 Langelier in St. Leonard, Quebec, or go visit them at cafevictorias.ca. Additionally, another little bit of news we just want to say, we do still have our giveaway going on. It does end on April 29th. When the Habs season ends, the giveaway ends. All you need to do, the giveaway again, is for a official, authentic Canadiens jersey with your pick of player and number or name, whatever you want to put. You just got to go to our YouTube page and subscribe. And if you can get some additional people to come, increases your odds. So we highly recommend you go and check that out if you haven't already. Gentlemen, let's start asking some questions. This year, you may or may not notice, there are an absolute ton of players that have hit 40 goals or more. There are also a ton of players that have gotten over 100 points this season. Little bit of stats for you. Try to keep it quick. There are 14 players as of the recording today that have 40 goals or more. Another 4 of them are sitting at 39 goals, so it's likely that number is even going to be higher. There is also 8 players this season that have hit the 100-point mark. 2 are very close as well, potentially might there. Looking back in the historics, let's not talk last year because of the shortened season, but you go back to 2019, 2020, only 5 players hit 40 goals or more. 18-19 had a big boom. There was 13, but before that, you had 8, 3, 4, and 3. Very low numbers. It's even crazier for the points. If you go back to last season, which is incredible, McDavid got 100 points in the shortened season, but let's not talk about it. Prior to that season, 1 player, 6 players in the big year of 18-19, but then 3, 1, 1, and none in 14-15. So my question is this: why or what has happened this season to make it so much more in terms of production for these players? Why are there so many more goals being scored, so many more big-time goal scorers, so many more guys getting 100 points? Dave, what is the reason?
All right. Well, I have a few theories. I'm not an expert in stats and stuff like that. But for me, just the eye test, I think there'll be few reasons. One of them is COVID, right? I think that you look at how many roster man games were lost, and how many like AHL guys, ECHL guys ended up in the NHL, and you have Connor McDavid or anybody, Johnny Gaudreau, anybody you want, and that you just named, playing against these. I don't want to say bums, but playing against these guys who are not NHL caliber players. I think that's a huge. That would explain this year at least. But scoring's been on the uptake throughout the NHL, and I think that it's a bit of the change in terms of how the hockey is played. It's a bit more open, fast-paced, and you have a little bit less of the grinding, which I think results in a lot more of 5-on-5 opportunities. At even strength, it used to be basically people score on the power play, and then at even strength, the game slowed down a little bit. I don't think you're seeing that as much in terms of when you watch a hockey game 5-on-5. It's still there. The pace of play, I find, is way better than it was years ago. And I think that probably contributes a lot. Players they don't have to wait for a power play. They don't have to wait for a penalty call. They could just, the lanes are pretty much open on the power play. And I think that's because we're getting rid of those fourth line grinders like slog and hook and hold. It took 20 years, but now you're seeing that there's almost none left of those players. It's all about speed. It's all about scoring and stuff like that. So those would be my 2 reasons on why we're seeing an uptick in scoring.
All right.
The game has opened up. It's not what it was in the sense of there was defensive hockey. Even the coaches now are pretty much offensive minded. You have defensemen now that have become more like forwards that are playing on the back end with Cale Makar and Adam Fox and so on. So it's become more of an offensive driven game, and a game that's built more on skill versus before there was the trap. There was defensive game. The identity of hockey before was two-way hockey.
But to be fair,
you need to be 200-foot players, and people.
But hold on. I don't mean to lose your train of thought, but I'm not like you mentioned the trap and stuff. I'm not comparing this year to the 90s. I'm just comparing it to the last 6 years. You're talking Matt, a massive increase.
In the last 6 years, there was defensive hockey. The mold of hockey, the way hockey should be played is that players had to be 200-foot players, and you had the occasional offensive-minded player that's why players like Patrick Kane were kind of frowned upon, because a lot of people used to say Patrick Kane used to stay at the blue line and wait for the puck and go and do his thing, and he put up the numbers. Now it's more like, it's not run and gun per se, but it's very close to that. It's all about skill. It's all about drive the offense, cut, transition to the neutral zone, and pick up the pace, get in. It's not so much a 200-foot game as anymore, because people want to see goals, people want to see scoring, they want that entertainment. So that's what the NHL pushed towards. You're not having toughness. It's not as tough as a game as it once was, or even 6 years ago, as you're saying. So it opened up. I think Dave's right. I think there is something to consider. It's a theory. It's maybe it's not the case. Maybe it is. But we did go to 2 years of COVID, and things did change a little bit in terms of the game and the way it is. The people, who knows what effects that played on everybody. Who knows what the fatigue on goaltenders. There's a lot of young goaltenders now in the NHL that are pretty much number ones or playing as number ones.
Well, that's another.
There's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
you're
looking at a lot of those young goalies that are still trying to figure things out, and there's a whole generation and an era of goaltending that's on the verge of retiring, or they're in the back nine of their careers, and they're the ones that were considered the best in the world today, and the elites and all that. And you're talking about Vasilevsky's, Carey Prices, and so on, and those guys are now in their back nines, probably on the verge of retirement. So now you got the Vaneceks, the Samsonovs, the Shesterkins, the Sorkins, those guys that are coming in, and they're going to make mistakes and they're going to let things in, even though Shesterkin's having a fantastic year.
Yeah, he might be the exception to the young goalie rule there. He might win the Vezina this year, but yeah.
But even then, you've seen him take a bit of a dive as of late, right? He's not racking up and he's not playing as well as earlier on in the season. I think as a whole, goaltending has,
82 game schedule, right? So last year they were playing a condensed 48 game schedule. It was 48 games?
No,
50. No, it was in the 50s. Okay,
yeah,
the condensed schedule in the 50s, and the year before that, you got cut off by COVID and whatnot. It was back and forth, and that was just a mess in itself. And now they're having an 82 game schedule. The experienced goaltenders, the elite goaltenders that I'm referring to, that are in the back nine, they know what it's like to go through an 82 game schedule. They know what it's like to say, okay, there's some games that are not gonna work out for me. I just gotta depend on my team and so on. So that's why I think there's a big uptick in scoring, and why you're seeing so many 100-point players this year, so many 40-plus goal scorers this year. That's just some of my theories.
All right. Sound theories, gentlemen. Sound theories. I do have another question, however, an opinion. It's an opinion, and I'm borrowing this from Pierre LeBrun, who on Twitter wrote a poll and basically wanted to know if people were pro the NHL removing the shootouts and extending 3-on-3 overtime. And so I didn't quite look at the results to see what the pulse of the people that responded to his Twitter poll. But for you guys, starting with you, Vito, are you down with the shootout, or would you like to see more 3-on-3?
Oh, 3-on-3. I mean, there's a reason why when we're watching 3-on-3, you have that level of excitement. People tend to sit up, they're watching. There's so much action happening, and like in the blink of an eye, something can happen and change in a 3-on-3. The shootout, I find the shootout was fun the first year it was introduced, and then it kind of faded away, and then people started doing things, and then I don't know, you're starting to see most recently, the thing that's been bothering me the most about the shootouts is that players are coming in, and they're coming in at such a slow pace that it almost looks like they're stopping, and there's barely any forward momentum on this. And yet it's just one-on-one with the goalie, and the goalie really doesn't stand a chance in a sense. And I find that that's kind of killed the shootout. It's not fun to watch the shootout anymore. But put me 3-on-3 hockey. Heck, you can even do 4-on-4 if you feel like it. Start 5 minutes on 4-on-4 and then drop it down to 3-on-3 as you get to another 5 minutes. But you know what I mean? Ooh. Just give me back the continuation of the game. I preferred the 3-on-3. I'm just throwing out some ideas there, but it would just be, it's that much more fun. How many times did you guys watch a 3-on-3 overtime and it's like the goalie made a big save, they come back, it's another 2-on-1?
Oh, it's exciting.
It's exciting. It's non-stop until it stops. But shootout, it's just, I mean, with the occasional time that it ends up going to like 10 rounds, and even this year, Montreal went to I think it was a 10 or 12 rounder, and the first thing we all said is it shows this was two last place teams. Nobody could score. It just sucked.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hate the shootout. The shootout was fun because it was a way to guarantee no ties, right? And I think that's what the aspect everybody loved. And for the first few years, it was something innovative. It was cool. It was cool to see kids, something you've never seen before. You go to a hockey game and then all of a sudden you have these penalty shots, which was like the dream of watching the Olympics as the game goes to a penalty to shootouts and back in the day. But I mean, I think it's rubbed off a little bit, and I think it's kind of boring, man. Like I don't look forward to a show when it's in overtime. I just want more, right? So to me, the danger, I don't want to go back to the ties. Like I think ties are absolutely stupid in any sport. I think it's the dumbest thing. I think you need a winner, figure out how to do it. But 10 minutes of 3-on-3 at the NHL level, you should be able to get somebody's going to score, right? So I think just expand it. It's a no-brainer for me. The shootout is boring. Nobody likes it. It's not in the playoffs. If you have to shoot it out in the playoffs, then I'm not a big fan of it. At least the 3-on-3 hockey, you see that in the playoffs. It's not 3-on-3, but it's still continuous overtime. And I think that you just have to play. MLB, they do right. You have to play, all the way until you get a winner. And even then, now they have that guy at second base and whatnot. I think
it's gone now that they got rid of it.
But they did it, but it was their equivalent of the 3-on-3, right?
Right.
So that's what I think is necessary. I think that you keep the 3-on-3 for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or even continuous forever, man. It's 3-on-3. You're going to score a goal.
I think the biggest thing about it was they didn't want to do games to go like 4 hours with constant overtimes that can continuously go. But I think you're making an excellent point. We've seen 3-on-3 hockey now for a long time. The majority of the 3-on-3 overtime games end with a goal in that overtime span of 5 minutes. You push it to 10. I would be so shocked if with the way the players get gassed, how somebody doesn't get a breakaway in the 7th, 8th, 9th minute to go and score.
Another thing that I would like to see, and this is like kind of gimmicky, so they'll probably never do this, but like put a 10-minute clock. If nobody scores in those 10 minutes, they each get a loss. They each get an overtime loss. No winners. You need to win the game. That's it.
The reverse tie.
No joke. And it's just you both get a loss. That's it. And you take the point away if you have to. Like that, you'll see everyone will score in a span of 5 minutes. It'll open right up.
I do think it's a little gimmicky. I don't think they're going to do it, but I do like it. I do like it. Now it's not so much play for the tie; it's play to not lose points. Like, oh my God, right? Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. So you're saying if you don't score in overtime, you get a minus a point?
You don't get minus. You just don't get the overtime point. Nobody gets.
You get no point.
Okay, so it's just zero. Isn't that like a tie though?
There were no winners. No, it's not, because you don't get that 1 point. You're chasing somebody in the standings, and you need a point. Now you're playing defense the whole time, and it gets boring, and then you give a tie, and now you get that 1 point. No,
it's not a tie per se, but it's like you played that whole game for nothing. You broke even.
That's what happens.
But it is a negative.
3-on-3 hockey.
Yeah, he's right. It is a negative, because if you're doing points chasing in the standings and you don't advance, and the other team gets the win, that extra 1 little point you would normally get as the loser point would have mitigated that separation a bit. But now you've lost. Like, it won't happen. Clearly, it won't happen. But it's an interesting thought. Okay, I like it, boys. I like it. Making other news around the NHL lately. Another team that speaking of losing, Vegas is very much looking like not going to be a playoff team this year for the first time in their franchise's history. Lots of fans, lots of people out there jumping on this hate bandwagon, I'm calling it, cheering for any team that plays against Vegas to win. Recently, it was Dallas and San Jose. The Dallas Stars very tongue-in-cheekly released a video just the other day before they played Vegas with a bunch of players and a bunch of fans basically showing the temporary Dallas Star fans how to be a Dallas Star fan, right? For the brief time that they're going to be fans cheering for their team to beat Vegas. So my question to you is this. Do you guys like that kind of thing? Do you like that fans of other teams that are not involved in the game are cheering for one team over the other team just to see them lose, just to have them be miserable? Do you jump yourselves on the hate bandwagon? Were you cheering for San Jose or Dallas to beat Vegas? What do you guys feel about that? I'll start with you, Vito. What do you think?
I mean, I guess in a sense, that's kind of how rivalries could be made between fans. But I mean, if people want to jump on the bandwagon, let them jump. It just brings attention to the game of hockey. It becomes a bit fun. Now, I mean, to a limit, to an extent. Don't start attacking fans and making this whole hoopla about it. But let fans be fans. At the end of the day, if you're a fan of hockey and you're one of those that's sour about the fact that Vegas was an expansion team, came into the NHL and made it to the Stanley Cup Finals and made the playoffs every year up until now, then be sour about it. But at the same time, it's fun. But at the same time, it shouldn't be every single team going and shit on the Vegas Golden Knights or going after the Vegas Golden Knights fans. It should be like literally the potential rivals between those between Vegas and whoever, the Californias or whatever, anybody that's going after Vegas.
I mean, and I'm talking fans, right? Like, you can take it a step further and be like, how do you feel about this new age of like all the teams having this social media presence where, San Jose is thanking LA and LA is thanking San Jose and Dallas is being thanked, and they're all kind of like sitting back thanking each other for beating another team.
Well, think of it this way, okay, right? At the end of the day, there was never really a rivalry between Montreal and Carolina. Ever since the offer sheet happened, I mean, yeah, okay, there was something there, but you wouldn't have called it a rivalry like Boston or Toronto Maple Leafs or any of those big ones. But now, in the last 2 years, offer sheet, the trolling on Twitter, this, that, and whatever. All of a sudden now, I mean, Matt, you're not a fan of Carolina. You're not a fan of some of their parody accounts that they have. So it builds a certain something, whether it's a rivalry between the teams itself and the players within each respective team, or it's between the fans. There's something there. So let there be. It's good for the game. It's healthy in an unhealthy way.
Yeah, I agree. It's 100% healthy. And the Vegas hate is warranted, right? Like, they came to the league with one of the sweetest deals ever in terms of an expansion draft. So much that they had to correct that when Seattle came in. They hoodwinked everybody, and they still managed to bumble it all. They fired Gallant, who was a fan favorite. People liked.
I forgot about that.
They tried to trade a player who had to a team that he had on his no trade
clause.
They're clearly stashing guys like Mark Stone and Alec Martinez on long-term IR to try to do the
Kucherov.
They've traded away every single prospect that they have. That's worthy.
They acquired Eichel, right? The big Eichel thing.
They acquire Eichel, who everybody kind of hates on. They're the team that they become the Rangers, kind of, where where is anyone going? Even if they have no cap space, somehow they're linked to the Vegas Golden Knights. They're just that one random team that, you look at their cap and you're like, oh, they're pretty full. Oh, they just signed Alex Pietrangelo to a massive contract. How did that happen? And so they're easy to hate, right? And again, you could argue they're over the top pregame ceremonies. You can argue.
But that's the thing, Dave, right? They're easy to hate, but just as easy as they are to hate, I can see why the next generation would like to follow and watch them, right? Well, they're an entertainment thing.
Of course, I like them. I like what they do and stuff like that. I mean, they've made some very questionable management decisions. They part with Marc-Andre Fleury, who's like always been steady for them, kind of, and a fan favorite. And you stick with Robin Leonard, who's unproven. It's just they make a bunch of and it's kind of as if everything's been handed to them. And they still kind of messed it up.
They are the WWE of hockey teams.
It's because the house always wins, guys. You get stacked, but the house always wins.
So yeah, but I mean, I love it. I'm all for the hate. I love this new era of social media, of teams dunking on it. I think Carolina does it. One of the best teams to do it. I know it's not a popular opinion in Montreal, but they are the best in their league. They're by far the best. The Kings were, I think, one of the first teams to come up with a social media strategy like that, and they were very, very good at what they did. And you've seen it go on, and it's led to the birth of guys like Gritty and stuff like that. So I'm all for it. I love it. I'm not personally jumping on the hate bandwagon, but I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where, as a very competitive person myself, oftentimes I found it's not so much I just want my team to win. I also want the other team to lose. It's kind of that mentality. I won't go on social media and start cheering another team just to beat another team that I happen to not like even Carolina, for example. If they were on the cusp of the playoffs, yeah, would I like them to not miss it because of haha? Sure, but I'm not going to be like, yeah, go, whatever, go Arizona, beat them today, yay! To me, no, but it is interesting. I think we're in a very, very new age. Like Vito was saying, you have hockey fans now more so than just your team fan. You're out there, you're getting involved in this kind of community.
And that's interesting. I also think that when we talk about hockey fans, I don't know. I think we're having more player fans than hockey fans. You know what I mean?
I can see that. Yeah,
there's people that are following more players. Doesn't matter which team they go to, they're going to follow the player. I'm a fan of this player. That's what it is. It's not so much I'm a Habs fan. I'm a Pittsburgh fan. I have certain teams that I follow, and despite who comes and goes from that team, that's who I'm with. But hockey it's changing. It's changing again. You can see it evolving before our eyes, and it's going into more of an entertainment space, more of a skill, offense. It's more driven to that, and we'll see what happens down the road. It's obviously going to change to something else eventually because this game is just evolving.
No, I 100% agree, and I think it's interesting that you bring up players, people being fans of players more over than the teams, because that also brings into like a question that I have here about like underrated stars, right? Like underrated players that exist out there. They are superstars, but like for whatever reason, they're not at the the Austin Matthews level of like, oh my God, stardom, and the Crosbys and things like this. So my question would be this, gents. Steven Stamkos, does he get all the love that he deserves, or is he one of the most underrated superstars in the NHL? And if he is not the most underrated superstar, in your opinion, who is? Who is out there that is a superstar and is just not getting the love that that he should be getting? Start with you, Dave.
Yeah, I think he is one of the most. I mean, it's difficult, right? Because there's so many underrated players in the league. Like if you want to talk superstars, if you want to talk like a guy like Josh Norris with Ottawa, right? The guy has 35, or he's closing on 35 goals in under 65 games. You know, he's been just unreal. But is he a superstar? He's new to the league.
Let's say no.
It's a normal way to be underrated. To me, the first two that pop to mind are Steven Stamkos, and you can make the argument for Jonathan Huberdeau, who's been having great over and over. And like now it's kind of and again, like now you're kind of seeing the push for the Hart Trophy for Huberdeau. But the thing with him is that just because we're in Montreal that we're hearing that? Like, is that?
Well, it's also probably his coming out party this year, right? Like this was the explosion year. So maybe like historically he's not a superstar, but maybe now he will be.
I would argue that he was a superstar. He was amazing.
Okay.
I really, really like this play. Stamkos is an interesting case because he is a phenomenal, obviously, player, former first overall pick. He's done it all. Really. He's scored 65 goals. He's one of the only 3 players in the Cap era to score 60 goals. He's done it all. The thing is, he's a victim of being on a team that doesn't necessarily need him. Right? They don't necessarily. They're so good. That team is built in such a way that an individual being taken out of that lineup is not killing them. Right, they have solid goaltending, solid defense, and they have stars up front that could compensate. And I think that's the victim. Like if Steven Stamkos, they relied on him a little bit more, I think people would have their eyes. Oh man, Stamkos is one of the best ever. But he is one of the best ever. I mean, look at him. The guy can score. The guy has a signature shot with Alexander Ovechkin on that power play, and he's just a guy who got injured at the wrong times, right? For like that cup run, for the Olympics, for all that stuff. Yeah. And it kind of made people think like, well, I mean, if he's not their most valuable player per se, can he be considered a true superstar? But he is, obviously. Take him out of there and put him on any other team. He's obviously going to be one of, if not the best player. So I think he is the most underrated player. He's the first one that comes to mind. And I think that's true. And it's a good point by you, Matt.
Thank you. Vito. Sidney Crosby. I know.
No, Sidney Crosby's underrated. Are you kidding me? I don't think Stamkos is underrated. I think he's just where he's at. I think he's one of those players that he's fantastic. I'll never take anything away from Steven Stamkos, but I just don't put him at the same level as a Connor McDavid, as Ovechkin, Crosby, Matthews now. I just never put him in that category. I always found he was like a notch above John Tavares and that level of talent. And when you look at it statistically for Stamkos, he's right in that wheelhouse. He's a superstar. He is a franchise player. But Dave said it. He's on a team where the team technically doesn't need him. If Steven Stamkos was playing for almost any other team in the NHL, or an original 6 team, forget it. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. You wouldn't even be talking about this. I don't think he's underrated. I think he's just where he's at. For me, a player that's very underrated in the NHL, that's not getting enough credit, and it's probably because the team he's on and injuries have hurt him a little bit, is Alexander Barkov. I honestly think Barkov deserves a bit more credit for the entire, not just his offensive numbers, which there's an uptick in it, but he's always been more or less almost a point-a-game player. It's his injuries that set him back, but he's also on the Florida Panthers. And up until this run that they're going on now, they were barely able to get 10,000 fans in the arena. People would question whether the Florida Panthers was a team that could be relocated and whatnot. So he didn't get the attention that he should. But Barkov, in terms of his two-way game, has gotten much better. He's one of those players that the spotlight should be on him. And you know what? He's got 88 points in 67 games this year, which is he'd be one of those players. And in that, there's 39 goals, so he's almost going to be a 40 goal scorer. If he weren't injured this season alone, you're talking about another 100-point player.
Yeah.
So I'd give it to Barkov as the most underrated right now, in my opinion, in the NHL. The rest of the guys are pretty much where they're at.
Dave's got something to say. Dave's holding it back. He's bursting.
Come on, Dave, bring it to me, man.
Stamkos, first off, he's one of the only 3 players to score 60 goals. Like, you can't ever take that away from him, man. The guy's
I never did.
No, but I mean, like that, and he's not celebrated as such, right? He's never talked about as one of the greatest goal scorers of all time. He's not on that level. The guy has 21 points in his last 7 games. Okay, that's an average of 3 points for 7 straight games. Have you even heard of that? Has anyone been talking about it? Has anyone been like, oh man, Steven Stamkos on the tear? Nobody talked about it at all.
Yeah, but on the flip side, Dave,
imagine if somebody else imagine if Austin Matthews had those numbers, or Mitch Marner had those numbers, or anybody else had those numbers. That's all we'd be hearing about. And
okay, on the flip side, Steven Stamkos is also playing on a team that gives him that support. On the contrary, when you're saying on one side he's not really needed, you're right, he's not. But he's also on a team that allows him to go say, okay, go play offense, go do what you got to do. It's fine. He's got Hedman to support in the back. He's got defensemen. So, I mean, he's not. It's not like Steven Stamkos is taking this team on his back and carrying it with him. And
I would argue he'd get even more points on a crap team. I put him in Edmonton and take McDavid out, he'd get just as many points.
I don't know.
Maybe not as many points because he's not as good as Connor McDavid. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying.
I mean, he's playing with
more points.
He's got Braden Point with him. He's got Kucherov. He's got players. He's got Hedman behind. He's got Sergachev. He's got Vassal. They have a team that's just built in a way where Steven Stamkos can afford to. Not that he's making mistakes, but if he does make a mistake, so what? He's just go do offense. Go play.
All right. That's fair.
We'll rip a shot now.
Fair.
Go do like Ovechkin. Go park your ass and just shoot if you have to. You know what I mean? Like they could just mold him the way that they want. In terms of like him carrying the team on his back, he's not that guy. He's not gonna carry the team on his back. He was that guy. I would say this about Steven Stamkos. There was that sequence where he got 90+ points for 3 consecutive years. At that point he was like carrying the.
But guys, the idea of carrying a team on your back, it doesn't exist anymore, man. Like,
no, it doesn't. It's fading.
Look at Sidney Crosby when he won those cups. Like, he didn't necessarily, although he stole a Conn Smythe trophy away from Phil Kessel. He didn't.
With that one.
Okay, he had periods during those playoffs and times like that where he was well surrounded. Genny Malkin was there. You had Marion Hope. Like, you know what I mean? There was a ton of players around him for his playoff runs and stuff like that as well. It's no one guy who's just carrying, unless you're Carey Price, a team is the Montreal Canadiens. You know what I mean?
Okay, let's not take what I'm saying out of context. I am not saying that Steven Stamkos is not a good player. I am just saying he's not in one echelon of players. He's like right below it. He is very talented.
But is he underrated to where he should be? Not. I'm not saying like maybe he should be under a notch of players, like in your pantheon of players. It's so fine.
At the end of the day, when people are going to evaluate where does Steven Stamkos fall, you can literally make the argument he's in the top 30, top 20. But there's players ahead of him that are, in my opinion, that I would rather have than him. Defensemen and goalies included in that list. So what I say is when you're asking me if he's underrated, in my opinion, no, he's not underrated. He's not like he's somebody that's getting 100 points and nobody's talking about Steven Stamkos. It's just that there's people ahead of him that are that much more talented that are worth more talking about than Steven Stamkos.
I think a lot of people didn't even notice Steven was on pace for 100 points this season. I would argue that. I think most NHL fans looked and said, oh shit, Stamkos has 100 points. Now, let's just take out of context somebody else that would do that. Let's go to Mitch Marner, has 97 points on the season. Everybody's talking about his quest for 100 points. Same thing with, imagine if Cole Caulfield got 100 next season. You don't think everybody would be talking about it? The fact that nobody's talking about Steven Stamkos.
Here's another one. Matthew Tkachuk this year has over 100 points. Is anybody talking about him?
Yes, everyone's talking about him.
Everyone's talking about
him. And RFA and Johnny Gaudreau and Johnny Gaudreau are amazing. Everybody's talking about that.
What about Krill the Thrill? He got over 100 points. Where was his love? I think I saw one post.
But this is the thing. So many players this year are getting 100 points or are flirting with 100 points at this point.
Well,
no, but in comparison to previous years, this is the closest thing we've gotten since the 70s and 80s hockey in terms of point production. Okay, nobody's hitting 200 points a la Wayne Gretzky or Mario Lemieux.
Okay, I get you. You're very passionate about how Steven Stamkos is exactly where he needs to be, and that's fine. We'll see. You know what?
You guys are you're asking
hold on a second. People listening, if you can, please go to the comments and let me know personally. Do you agree with Vito's assessment of Steven Stamkos as being just pretty much a superstar, and that is where he needs to be? Or do you agree with Dave where he is one of the most underrated superstars in the league? I'd love to hear what you have to say.
I said he's where he should be. He is being recognized.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, he was recognized as a guy who gets 90-plus points a season. He's a 90-point player. It's not something to take away. He's just not. He wasn't a 120-point player or 115-point player.
You hate Steven Stamkos. I get it.
Yes.
I get it.
If you can find it.
Massive grudge against Steven Stamkos. I guess he didn't, I don't know, wave at you at one point when you were watching him play. I don't know. Whatever your reasons, we'll dive into that another time. We are out of time for this episode, gents. Thanks very much. Thank you, everybody listening, subscribing, following, commenting. Really love that kind of stuff. Highly encourage it. We love the interactions with all of the listeners and viewers. Please keep that up. Feel free. That's fantastic stuff. Yes, again, the giveaway. Remember, April 29th is the last day for the giveaway. So if you haven't already, go and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That is how you are going to be entered for the giveaway. Additionally, one last time, this episode, again, brought to you by our sponsors, Cafe Victoria's. Great people. Go check them out. Like I said, 8600 Langelier, St. Leonard, Quebec, or cafevictorias.ca. Fantastic, guys.
Fantastic food and coffee and drinks, guys.
Definitely.
All the goodies.
You guys both want lunch, I would say. So we're going to go to Cafe on you.
Well, I think what Dave is trying to say, yes. Yeah, on Vita. There you go.
I didn't hear anything. Dave's been cutting. I didn't hear any of that.
All right, before we get any more technical problems, for Dave and Vito, I'm Matt. Thanks so much. And this was Get Pucked.